Hi guys, hello. Happy reading. Happy Monday. Hello, hello, hello. It is good as always to see you. I am so excited to venture into Two Towers with you guys today. New book. It feels so good. I don't know about you guys. It smells so good. And it's so satisfying to like highlight such a fresh book. Andrew taught you something today. I saw that you had commented on his post. Wild. What news from the north? Hello, Toodles, Andrew, Eric, Wild, Kelly, hello. I could not believe that I airheaded not having this actual thing scheduled on YouTube. Like in my mind and in my like schedule, it was like chapters 1 and 2. I didn't even have the Discord event up. That's my bad. Let me just make a note. To set up next week's right after, because I realized before, like, that I'd had them all scheduled out, and then of course like some of them got changed because of life stuff, so I thought it's better that I like announce for sure that the next one is Monday, or if there need to be changes at the book club the week prior, right? But then silly little me wasn't in the habit of getting it all scheduled right after streams, so don't worry. You ought to start reading along. You haven't read this since the first time 2 years ago. Toodles, the first 2 chapters, I think, are some of my favorites. I thought that I'm so excited to discuss them today. This is probably one of like the shorter sections we've read yet. And like I said last week, we're going to do 2 chapters for Two Towers instead of 3 like we were doing before. Because some of the 2 chapter sections are like as long as the 3 chapter sections we had for Fellowship. The first time you were at Two Towers was so long ago in an earlier age that you don't remember ever not knowing about the quest of the ring. Isn't that interesting when when something you love becomes so ingrained in your brain and in your existence? These chapters are some of my favorite. Lips every single week. You're so right. You're so right to say that and call me out on that, and I'll never change. I'll simply never change. I don't I I had a friend call me out on my reactions in like a loving way, and they were like, you never say how you like actually feel about a movie. You just like analyze it, or you just like, you never say you like love or hate something. And I was like, because honestly, I don't usually hate things. I don't usually find a ton to dislike, for better or worse. Of course, there are definitely things in life that I dislike, and I have my opinions, but genuinely and more often than not, I find that I experience media with like just like meeting it where it is and letting it be its own thing. Because I think a lot of like criticism or disliking of something comes from comparing it to something else. Being like, oh, well, it wasn't this. But like, you know, each thing is its own thing. So to compare it to something that it's not seems so cruel. Seems so cruel. Of course, we can compare this kind of to the movies, and that's so fun. That's a fun comparison, which I want to speak about when we get to the second chapter, because there were moments where I felt that movie, the pacing of that part of the movie so vividly. Christopher Lee read it every year. You get the feeling every chapter you read is becoming your favorite. I think I'm just a big fan of the story and like the way it unfolds. And yeah, it's true. It's true. I find something to love about each section, which I think is to the benefit of like reading little chapters at a time, because I get to be in that tiny section of this huge world so intently, versus like thinking of all 20 chapters from Fellowship of the Rings in one whole thing, you know. Then of course I could be like, well, okay, this chapter was my favorite and this chapter wasn't my favorite, but I don't know, I feel like I would still be hard pressed to say something wasn't good or wasn't my favorite. I don't know, that's neither here nor there, is it? Hi Kendra, welcome in. You think the film makes the breaking of the Fellowship incidents a bit more coherent than the book? There's some nice final scenes between characters. Yeah, film has an opportunity to do what writing can't, and writing sometimes offers the opposite, right? I will say I think the death of Boromir was, we're just talking high level stuff right now, but we'll go chapter by chapter, and we'll get to the comments that you guys left in the community section today. But Boromir's death hit me harder in the book than it did in the movie. It felt so, well, there was and I can speak more in depth about the how the writing elevated the death in like a more emotional way, of course. Yeah, I found the death to be, but maybe it's also like I would have said this before, I think the writing of Boromir was more even, like he was a more fleshed out likable character in the book. He had his moments of like being more power hungry than some of the rest in the Fellowship, which tended to, in comparison to the rest of the people in the Fellowship, made him seem kind of more evil by nature. But of course, we discussed last week a lot of his motives, and his motives are noble. His motives for the power, for the ring, for the choices that he made were not of evil intention. So therefore, he is worthy of being in the Fellowship. He's worthy of being revered and adored in his own right. But I don't think that, I don't know. Well, and you know, how would I feel about him on a second watch through, third watch through? Different than a first, for sure, you know. Evening, Michael. I think it's more clear in the book that Boromir is a great man. Greater than I am, for sure, but still not up to the yeah, right? Still not, in that's fair. Like, it's power, when you're faced with power, and seemingly a power that will solve your problems and save your family and save your community. Come on. We would all want it. We would all flirt with the idea of how that could fix our problems, of course. The further the story goes, the more serious and epic it's getting. It's changing a lot as Tolkien moved further and further away from a sequel to The Hobbit. Yeah, Kelly. Yeah. I feel like so far in these two chapters that we read, the writing was these are some of my favorite paced chapters, and we'll get into the whys behind why I feel that way here in a bit. Only thing I dislike reading is first person writing, especially if two people's POV is involved. It gets confusing. It can get confusing. Toodles. I think if you would make a 1-by-1 version of the book, it would be a 50-hour movie and also deadly boring. Agreed, Kelly. Agreed. Absolutely. You have to make decisions you have to make crucial decisions to tell a story in the media you're telling it in, especially when you're adapting. But always when you're telling a story, you need to make decisions on how the story evolves in the best way. So, you're so right for that. One thing that the movie did was go back and forth between the plot lines more often than Tolkien did in the book. Yeah. We get, and that's something that movies kind of can do a little bit more, right? They can do that a little more seamlessly without breaking the enchantment or breaking the continuity of the story. Redemption is a big theme with Tolkien. Yeah, Pedro. Yeah, you're right. You're so right about that. It definitely shines through. So it seems like we're going to have a great conversation about this one. You know what? Let's just we don't have the chapters are all in all I think like 40 pages. So just to set off the storytelling of it all, I'll read the synopsis and then we'll get into chapter 1 and then we'll get into chapter 2, the highs and lows of them, the writing, the pacing, I want to talk about Aragorn and Legolas today a lot, and the I think there was a very beautiful kind of contrast to the two of them and the different things that they brought to the table and their skills in the path. And then of course we lost Boromir, and we a very big cliffhanger actually. We didn't really solve any we really big cliffhanger, the mysterious man at the end. The animated adaptations take many different types of liberties and other things less so. I think Peter Jackson made some great, some not so great, and some very impactful choices to bring the feelings of the book to the movies. Yeah, I think he had a lot to work with and decisions were made. The book would be very confusing, jumping perspectives like the movie. Agreed. I also like the suspense it builds to keep us in the dark about the characters we don't see at the moment. Agreed. And that comes into play hugely today. Hugely. The suspension of where's all of our characters. Where in the movie, we get to know that our friends are safe, but in the book, we really don't. And I will say that is like the only thing... That's the only element of like reading the book, having watched the movies, that is kind of like creates a very different experience. I think one of the biggest differences if you've watched the movies first and then you read the books is that you can presumably the movies didn't stray too far from the books and the storylines of the main characters, right? So you can presume that like so-and-so is safe, but like the books do a very good job of keeping that kind of more suspenseful and like you're like eager to find out where they are and not knowing where they are so quickly. That the movie kind of like shows you people are safe a lot sooner. When Jackson was editing the film, he did it in the big plot chunks and then edited them together after. Oh, fascinating, Andrew. The concept of redemption and free will created a moral quandary in Tolkien's universe. If anyone can be redeemed, so can orcs. If so, killing them is evil. If not, it implies there is no free will. That's a giant thing to sit with. Honestly. In the DVDs, the commentaries from the writers and Peter Jackson explain why they changed things from the book. Oh, for sure. I do enjoy watching commentary. I think like there's some miniseries that I've watched. Two of my favorite shows are Chernobyl and The Last of Us show, and the commentary sections of those. HBO honestly does a really great job of post series commentary that is honestly, I think, top of the class example of like bringing someone and having like bringing people important to the creation of the show in and having impactful and like concise conversations about why decisions were made. And it's so helpful to listen to those things. I've not yet listened to any of those things for Lord of the Rings, but maybe I should. Jackson and crew took on a nearly impossible task and won, in my opinion. I would agree. I mean, I think the movies are phenomenal. I really, really do. Having read the books first and the movies, some of the best surprises for me was the music, then the landscape, then the craftsmanship of the costumes and such in that order, Eric. Yeah. I often find myself wondering, what would I think Aragorn looked like? Or what would I think this world looked like if I hadn't seen the movies? Now, of course, I'm a very like visual reader regardless, so I don't have a very concise way to say this, but like when I'm reading a book and I haven't seen the movie first, I will like have this weird moment when I put the book down for a moment where it feels like my real world is like fading back in, and I'll be like, oh, I'm just in my living room. I'm not in one of the last books I read was Greek mythology. I'm not in the pantheon right now. I'm not in Hades' underworld. I'm not wherever in this like grand universe. I'm just in my living room. Okay. That's always really weird to me, but it's interesting because like I have the visuals from the movie playing in my mind, so it's a very different experience, but similar all the same. Okay. Let's set up where we're at today with the synopsis, because I really did enjoy this synopsis at the beginning of at least the book that I have. So this is the second part of The Lord of the Rings. The first part, The Fellowship of the Ring, told how Gandalf the Grey discovered that the ring possessed by Frodo the Hobbit was in fact the One Ring, ruler of all the rings of power. It recounted the flight of Frodo and his companions from the quiet shire of their home, pursued by the terror of the Black Riders of Mordor, until at last, with the aid of Aragorn and Ranger of Eredor, they came through desperate perils to the house of Elrond in Rivendell. There was held the great council of Elrond, at which it was decided to attempt the destruction of the ring, and Frodo was appointed the ring-bearer. The companions of the ring were then chosen, who were to aid him in his quest, to come if he could to the Mountain of Fire in Mordor, the land of the enemy himself, where along the ring could be unmade. In the fellowship were Aragorn and Boromir, son of the Lord of Gondor, representing men, Legolas, son of the Elven King of Mirkwood, for the elves, Gimli, son of Gloin of the Lonely Mountain, for the dwarves, Frodo with his servant Samwise and his two young kingsmen Meriadoc and Peregrine, for the hobbits, and Gandalf the Grey. The companions journeyed in secret far from Rivendell in the north, until baffled in their attempt to cross the high pass of Caradhras in winter. They were led by Gandalf through the hidden gate and entered the vast mines of Moria, seeking a way beneath the mountains. There Gandalf in battle with a dreadful spirit of the underworld fell into a dark abyss, but Aragorn, now revealed as the hidden heir of the ancient king of the west, led the company on from the east gate of Moria through the elvish land of Lorien and down the great river Anduin until they came to the falls of Rauros. Already they had become aware that their journey was watched by spies, and that the creature of Gollum, who once had possessed the ring and still lusted for it, was following their trail. It now became necessary for them to decide whether they should turn east to Mordor or go on with Boromir to the aid of Minas Tirith, chief city of Gondor, in the coming war, or should divide. When it became clear that the ring-bearer was resolved to continue his hopeless journey to the land of the enemy, Boromir attempted to seize the ring by force. The first part ended with the fall of Boromir to the lore of the ring, with the escape and disappearance of Frodo and his servants, Samwise and the scattering of the remainder of the Fellowship by a sudden attack of orc soldiers, some in the service of the Dark Lord of Mordor, some of the traitor Saruman of Isengard. The quest of the ring-bearer seemed already overtaken by disaster. And then the rest seems a little well, it's not really. The second part, The Two Towers, now tells how each of the members of the Fellowship of the Ring fared after the breaking of their fellowship, until the coming of the Great Darkness and the outbreak of the War of the Ring, which is to be recounted in the third and last part. And here it is. Damn, I am not in Lorien. When I'm reading a book, it's like a mini movie in my brain. Same. Yep. Finally made it to Rick, you're right on time. We're just getting into it. Only starting now. Thanks, Wild. That's why I can't read Stephen King. Apparently I have a very vivid and terrifying imagination. The movies don't bother me at all, though. Man, I don't normally get too spooked out by movies, but I watched It Comes at Night the other night. And then I went to bed, and I have two cats. My more quiet cat was like running around at 6 a.m, and my bedroom is like right back that hallway. So in this hallway, I thought I saw a demon just standing here. When I opened my eyes, I went back to sleep for 2 more hours. I was like, absolutely not. I was like, I will not be walking into the demon hallway. While my cat's yowling, I was like, no, that demon's real. It's gotta be. That's just a little side Side fun lips lore. Okay, so chapter 1, the departure of Boromir. So we start with Aragorn, and he's still searching for Frodo, right? And he's using this is where we know a good deal about Aragorn at this point. We know his lineage for the most part. We know he's got a lover of some sort. We know he's this ranger, this man that's of like a really high descendants. We know that he's very wise with the land. And we get Dag Warden commented about specifically how we see Aragorn now and how he begins to act more kingly. He presents himself to the writers and is no longer merely as a ranger, but as a lord in his own right. And I think that's very true. We do see him start to battle kind of with the disaster that's unfolding around us, and he carries that really heavily in his own heart, which I feel is an unfair thing for him to feel, but I also understand that, like, because that's his character, that's how he's gonna feel. So it does make sense, and is honorable that he would feel such way, and he doesn't ever let it become something that gets in the way of making a choice. He's always able to overcome it when he needs to, at least so far, even if he seeks extra counsel or extra advice to do so. But in the beginning of this chapter, we see him, he's searching for Frodo, and he makes it to the top, this seat that he wanted to see, and he had to choose between like going back, following Frodo's footsteps that went back down the hill, or going up and getting a high seat, getting a high vantage point, which I think was the right decision, because I don't think even if he went back down, he would have caught Frodo and Sam. So he gets up there, he sees another great bird, like an eagle, high in the air, which is important. And then he starts to hear orcs. And then, so he's up there. Let's just read this. There were cries, and among them, to his horror, he could distinguish the harsh voices of orcs. Then suddenly, with a deep-throated call, a great horn blew. In the blast of it smote the hills and echoed in the hollows, rising in a mighty shout above the roaring of the falls. So that's the horn of Boromir, which we find out. And we knew that Boromir held a horn. But this is some of the best. This is a top class example of writing such an intense moment, because I feel the way that Tolkien used the sound of the horn to tell the really critical and to tell the critical downfall of Boromir here is phenomenal. It's phenomenal writing. We do see Strider the Expert Ranger here. He's still called Troder in the draft. Oh. Gondor is Ondor at this point in the draft too. Interesting. I like Gondor better than Ondor. A little more emphasis. Aragorn sped up on the hill. It was a line that your brother-in-law always used to quote to me. Perhaps it was to prove that both of us had got this far in the book. That's a spoiler the reader doesn't know yet. It's orcs from Isengard and Mordor. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Kelly. We do learn early on, but yeah, interesting to put that in the synopsis, right? Remember what Elrond said when the Fellowship left Rivendell? Slow should you be to wind that horn again, Boromir, until you stand once more on the borders of your land and dire need is on you. Thank you so much for bringing that quote back up, because I knew in my heart that it was like really there was like a lot of the use of the horn was kind of like frowned upon to some extent, but I do remember him using it at least once already and kind of getting like a slap on the wrist, I think, from Aragorn, or maybe it was Legolas at the time. The book has a lot of acoustical aesthetic for sure. Yeah. Okay, so let's read this. As he ran, the cries came louder, but fainter now, and desperately the horn was blowing. Fierce and shrill rose the yells of the orcs, and suddenly the horn calls ceased. Aragorn raced down that last slope, but before he could reach the hill's foot, the sounds died away, and as he turned to the left and ran towards them, they retreated, until at last he could hear them no more. I just think like the use of the sound of the horn to tell the story of something we're not there to see, because in the movie we experience the falling of Boromir, we experience the death firsthand, or we experience the injury that leads to the death, right? Because we are there with him when he dies in the book. But we don't experience the battle that led to his death in the book. And I think that just the use of the horn and like I don't know. It's like I imagine Tolkien would have written out this like really complicated and intricate explanation. And then this book, which is the shortest of the three, would have been so much longer, right? But it's really well done. I think the use of sound to tell that downfall. Was that just a warning, or did Elrond know what was coming? Good question. We do get to a point where we talk about Gandalf's choice to come. I think in the second chapter here. So we can talk more about like the whys, what they know, and like the decision to go if they know that death is upon them. So we get this sense that Boromir did not either survive this fight that we're running up to or something. We get the sense that something bad has happened. Aragorn comes to Boromir. Aragorn saw that he was pierced with many black feathered arrows. His sword was still in his hand, but it was broken near the hilt. His horn, cloven in two, was at his side. Many orcs lay slain, piled all about him and at his feet. It paints a desperate picture, a desperate and a heartbreaking picture. Foreshadowing is a dramatic device in which an important plot point is mentioned early, the story to return later in a more significant way. Yes, I will say, foreshadowing is definitely something Tolkien does well, and he does often, in my opinion. Which is something that I sense because I've seen the movies, right? I don't think I would sense it as much if I was just reading, but... Hi, Ark. Welcome in. We're just talking about Boromir's dying last moments. Aragorn knelt beside him. Boromir opened his eyes and strove to speak. At last, slow words came. I tried to take the ring from Frodo. I am sorry, I have paid. His glance strayed to his fallen enemies. 20 at least lay there. They have gone, the halflings, the orcs have taken them. I think they are not dead. Orcs bound them. He paused and his eyes closed wearily. After a moment, he spoke again. Farewell, Aragorn. Go to Minas Tirith and save my people. I have failed. No, said Aragorn, taking his hand and kissing his brow. You have conquered. Few have gained such a victory. Be at peace. Minas Tirith should not fall. Boromir smiled. Which way did they go? Was Frodo there? Said Aragorn. But Boromir did not speak again. So we know, as the reader, that Sam and Frodo have left in the boat. But now we know that all that Boromir has been able to tell Aragorn is that the orcs have taken the halflings. So Aragorn's faced with this decision of faced with the decision of needing to get information. But before Gimli and Legolas show back up, he says he takes a moment to say, thus passes the heir of Denethor, Lord of the Tower of Guard. This is a bitter end. Now the company is all in ruin. It is I that have failed. Vain was Gandalf's trust in me. What shall I do now? Boromir has laid it on me to go to Minas Tirith, and my heart desires it. But where are the ring and the bearer? How shall I find them and save the quest from disaster? Oh no, Doodles, I'm so sorry. No spoilers, but so far in the book, we don't really know Tolkien's full mythology and pantheon of gods and world creation that tells us how much Elrond or Gandalf can foretell. What part did you guys get an ad at? Because we can circle back for a second. Aragorn keeps beating himself up for this decision he is making. Yeah. I feel like it felt like when I set this live up, there was a different way they were putting the ad stuff in for me. I know they've changed some of their ad stuff and they're doing it more like on their end now. So we'll have to, I'll have to find a way to like understand when the ads are going to happen. We hate ads, my precious. We do hate ads. I know. I know. Okay. You had an ad much earlier in the stream. Okay. They told me to like that the best way to do it was to have it not all at the same time, but maybe the best way is to have all the ads hit at one time. Because I did like the least amount of ads you can do. So there should be an ad like every 30 minutes. Those were the options that I had. If I would prefer no ads on our book club live streams, honestly. I'm fine. Like it's better, like it's easier to manage it. I mean, I think like the like obviously when people are watching the VOD of it, like add them up, but like the live streams of it, it is really it's not ideal. I'll try to understand it more so we can have a more seamless experience with the ads, because I'm not on Twitch, like I get like a notification when an ad is coming, and then I have like a few moments to prepare, and then I have like, then I know when the ad is there, but I don't know if I can set up a warning like that for YouTube. I'll try though. I'll see what I can do. Makes Aragorn more relatable, to be honest. He feels more human. I agree. I do agree. It seemed to pick up without missing anything. Okay, perfect. Thanks, guys. Thanks. I know ads are a bummer. I know they are. Okay. Okay, yeah, so Aragorn carries this huge responsibility, obviously, which he is this leader, but I really do like that there's this writing into these leaders that take on these positions in this story. We saw it with Gandalf, we see it with Aragorn, where they're not devoid of feeling, they're not devoid of mistake. And when mistakes happen, they don't seem to have a ton of arrogance surrounding the mistakes, which I appreciate. And because it keeps them likable, because mistakes are natural, they're human, they're mistakes, death, disaster. I think what makes a great leader is not the ability to always prevent disasters. Of course, you want to be able to prevent disasters, but how you handle the disasters that do happen. So, and I think Aragorn is a great example of a great leader. They still do the same thing they do on TV. Isn't that fucking ads need to turn their gains down? God. Until we get to Denethor. Well, yeah. Denethor isn't. I'll be interested to see how Denethor comes across in the book, how they write him in. My theory is Aragorn is actually not doing this all to do the right thing or something good. It's about what Elrond told him. Yeah, because he wants to be on the good side of Elrond, right? Because that's his girl's dad. I mean, of course he wants to impress him. But yeah, I think Aragorn feels this like deep sense of duty, and he does seem to have this like, because I think what we see him struggle with a lot today is this, he's been given this task. Well, he originally joined this journey, and I think he's just about to say it, because now Gimli and Legolas show up and he has to tell them that Boromir's dead. He fell defending the hobbits, and now they need to make a decision. But of course, first he says an evil choice is now before us. We do not know whether the ring bearer is with them or not, and we to abandon him, must we not seek him first? An evil choice is now before us. Sorry, I'm drinking a soda. So it is a little bubbly. So they decide that first, before they make a decision, they're gonna set like they're gonna put Boromir to rest as best as they can. Elrond told Aragorn he will only marry Arwen when he gains all land back his ancestors lost. So far we have established that all the characters can or may die. Yeah. I think Aragorn struggles, but not for the same reasons as in the movies. Ooh, interesting. If you want to expand on that thought, Toodles. So hold on, let's talk about let's give Boromir his moment, and then let's talk about the decision that the fellowship is going to make, because I think that I don't want to speed over Boromir's death and all that they do for him, because they do take a big moment here, and I think it's important as character development, and it helps us relate to the characters and the story. And of course we learn that like we find the weapons of Peregrine and Merry, Pip and Merry. And this is also where we see, so this is when they're looking over all the orcs that are dead and searching for clues on what has happened, right? Trying to solve this riddle before us. Aragorn looked on the slain, and he said, "Here lie many that are not folk of Mordor. Some are from the north, from the misty mountains, if I know anything of orcs and their kinds. And here are others strange to me. Their gear is not after the manner of orcs at all. Upon their shields they bore a strange device, a small white hand in the center of a black field. On the front of their iron helms was set an S rune, wrought of some white metal. I have not seen these token before," said Aragorn. "What do they mean?" "S is for Sauron," said Gimli. "That is easy to read." "Nay," said Legolas, "Sauron does not use the elf runes." "Neither does he use his right name, nor permit it to be spelt or spoken," said Aragorn. "And he does not use white. The orcs in the service of Barad-dûr use the sign of the red eye." He stood for a moment and thought. "S is for Saruman, I guess." He said at length, "There is evil afoot in Isengard, and the west is no longer safe. It is as Gandalf feared. By some means the traitor Saruman has had news of our journey. It is likely, too, that he knows of Gandalf's fall. Pursuers from Moria may have escaped the vigilance of Lorien, or they may have avoided that land and come to Isengard by other paths. Orcs travel fast, but Saruman has many ways of learning news. Do you remember the birds?" "Well, we have no time to ponder riddles," said Gimli. "Let us bear Boromir away. But after that we must guess the riddles if we are to choose our course rightly," answered Aragorn. "Maybe there is no right choice," said Gimli. It's interesting what happens when Aragorn stops struggling. Sauron has reason to fear him. Yeah. It's, I love Gandalf, obviously. Gandalf is phenomenal. But this story would be so different if Gandalf hadn't fallen. I think Aragorn is, in terms of leading the group and like telling this story, and this story being like a little grippier, I think Aragorn as the leader makes it a little bit better. Gandalf would be too steady, too easy. Everything would be too wise. Of course, it would be nice, but, you know. I wish they were called Peregrine and Merigrin. Legolas collects arrows. They find orcs with Mark of White Hand and an S rune. The S rune for Saruman is the one that looks like a less than. Ooh. Oh yeah, I don't know runes. Are you a rune reader? In the movies, Aragorn seemed to struggle with accepting that he needed to become king. In the book, he seems to struggle more with choosing the right decisions, what to do in the moment. Yeah. I will say, like, in the movie, I don't ever feel like I was waiting for anyone to, like, decide what to do as much as in the books. To go a bit forward, if Gandalf didn't fall, there wouldn't be a Gandalf the White, and they wouldn't have been. Everything has to happen for a reason, right? Yep, that's fair. That's fair and true. So they make the decision that they're gonna bear away Boromir, and then they're gonna solve the riddles to figure it out. And what I love about that is that instead of just like making a decision based on feelings, they're looking for clues that lead them to the smartest or the most necessary decision in the moment. And obviously that's very much in Aragorn's nature, and it shows through very, very deeply in these moments. They're going to get a boat to send Boromir down the river, and that's when they find out that there's only 2 boats upon the bank, and they couldn't find trace of the other. So they still take this moment. They put Boromir in the middle of the boat. They lay in all the weapons of the orcs he slayed. They lay in his horn, and they cast loose the funeral boat. There Boromir lay, restful, peaceful, gliding upon the bosom of the flowering water. The stream took him while they held their own boat back with their paddles. He floated by them, and slowly his boat departed, waning to a dark spot against the golden light, and then suddenly it vanished. Boros roared on unchanging. The river had taken Boromir, son of Denethor, and he was not seen again in Minas Tirith, standing as he used to stand upon the white tower in the morning. But in Gondor in after days it long was said that the elven boat rode the falls and the foaming pool and bore him down through Osgiliath and past the many mouths of Anduin and out into the great sea at night under the stars. In the books, Aragorn never questioned becoming king, just went to do it. Oh. Aragorn is definitely one of my favorite characters. I think it's worth taking a moment to read the songs for Boromir too. As the book did, we shall send Boromir off in the best way we can. He gets a Viking burial, more or less. Yeah, I noticed that's what I called it in the movies too. Of course, without the fire, but Tolkien was very knowledgeable about Germanic and Norse customs. Yep, I think it was the right choice. It's very meaningful. Very powerful burial. Through Rohan over fen and field, where the long grass grows, the west wind comes walking, and about the walls it goes. What news from the west, O wandering wind, do you bring to me tonight? Have you seen Boromir, the tall by moon or by starlight? I saw him ride over 7 streams, over waters wide and gray. I saw him walk in empty lands until he passed away. Into the shadows of the north I saw him there, then no more. The north wind may have heard the horn of the son of Denethor. O Boromir, from the high walls westward I looked afar, but you came not from the empty lands where no men are. From the mouth of the sea the south wind flies, from the sandhills and the stones. The wailings of the gull it bears, and at the gate it moans. What news from the south, O sighing wind, do you bring to me at eve? Where now is Boromir the fair, he tarries, and I grieve. Ask not of me where he doth dwell, so many bones there lie, on the white shores and the dark shores, under the stormy sky. So many have passed down Anduin to find the flowing sea. Ask of the north wind news of them. The north wind sends to me. O Boromir, beyond the gate, the seaward roads run south. But you came not with the wailing gulls from the grey sea's mouth. From the gate of kings the north wind rides, and past the roaring falls, and clear and cold about the tower its loud horn calls. What news from north, O mighty wind, do you bring to me today? What news of Boromir the bold, for he is long away. Beneath the Mon hen I heard his cry, their many foes he fought. His cloven shield, his broken sword, they to the water brought. His head so proud, his face so fair, his limbs they laid to rest, and Rarros golden Rarros falls bore him upon its breast. O Boromir, the tower of guard shall ever northward gaze, to Rarros golden Rarros falls until the end of days. It's a beautiful burial. Beautiful burial. Toodles. Yep. Okay. Okay, so from Andrew in his post for today. So there's a note for those among us who are mapless, thank you. The 7 streams refers to the land south of the mountains that lie east-west in the lower part of the map. If you ever glance at it, these mountains are white mountains that have been mentioned various times in Rivendell and Lothlorien, and here in the book 3 chapters. However, there is little confusion about this reference in the lament, in that it appears to be describing Boromir's travel to the Council of Elrond at Rivendell, i.e. the west wind says where Boromir has been. Now we know from Boromir's comments in A Journey in the Dark, until we come to the Gap of Rohan, taking the road that I followed on my way hither. Or we might pass by and cross the Isen into Langstrand and Lebanon, and so come to Gondor from the regions nigh to the sea. And in Farewell to Lorien, when I was sent out as a messenger, I passed through the gap by the skirts of the White Mountains and crossed the Isen and the Grey Flood into northern land. That he is saying he took the path north of the White Mountains. Note in the second journey, quote, the alternative option was for the Fellowship to travel south of the White Mountains into Langstrand and Lebanon. But the West Wind in the lament talks about Boromir riding over the 7 streams, which is the route south. It is confusing, but it was probably caused by the following change during the draft. Oh. In the first draft of the chapter, when the lament was first written, the 7 streams did mention the region north of the mountains because it was what the area was called in the first draft of the map itself. In later versions of the map, the 7 streams designation moved from north of the mountains to the south region, but the line from the lament was not updated and or Boromir's route was not adjusted. Yep, Andrew, thank you for that deep dive. Fascinating. Yeah, and then Wild says the idea that the maps evolved and the line wasn't updated is very gripping, what just happened there. But I also before we move on to the choices, I want to take a moment to read what Wilde said about this too, or Wilde said about Aragorn. We open today with Aragorn struggling with choices. He makes many, and almost all seem to go ill. He laments himself that he cannot seem to do the right thing, no matter how hard he tries. This string of disasters culminates in him finding Boromir as he lay dying. Their encounter is tender, but Aragorn's bedside manner may leave something to be desired. Oh, you think? He comforts Boromir, but presses for details nonetheless. Too late he does this. Too late. Did he choose right? Hold on. I'll read this whole thing. Too late he does this, as Boromir cannot answer his most important question. The 3 remaining of the company send Boromir to the sea via Anduin the Great in a rather touching funeral. Agreed, very touching. The comment on the east wind being cruel, symbolism and metaphor abound, and then Aragorn reads the signs. He deciphers what has happened to Frodo and Sam. We're about to get into this part, but I'll read this as a little before we dive into the details of it. He deciphers what has happened to Frodo and Sam, but declines to explain what made Frodo flee. He protects Boromir's integrity and legacy. I loved that choice, honestly. Aragorn ponders his path and at last concludes that the company has ended. Its part has been played. He will not abandon the captives to torment and death. This is how he interprets Galadriel's instruction that your quest stands upon the edge of a knife. Stray but a little, and it will fail to the ruin of all. Yet hope remains while the company is true. Did he choose right? Only time will tell. Is it feeling like you guys are getting more ads tonight? I'll wait a moment. But I'll find my place in the book too. We'll keep pressing on. I feel like interesting. I'm gonna do it next time so that it's all at once instead of like whatever this version of everyone gets one at a different time is. And it seems like everyone's getting one like all the time. I did the least amount it would let me do. So I'm a little bummed, but I'm at the hands of YouTube and whatever. I had a feeling that their new ad stuff would be really overwhelming. Not like an overwhelming for me, but like overwhelming for the viewer. For you minutes before Andrew. Okay. Yes, I think we're going to get them all at different times tonight. I'll make sure for next week that they're set to be all at. Everyone will get an ad at the same time, I think, is what it will allow me to do. And then hopefully I can keep like a closer eye on when the ads go. I do wish it would let me know when the ads happened. Oh. I suppose I need this screen up. It does look like I have an option to delay ads, which I've never noticed that. I saw the option to insert an ad last week, but I didn't see this option to delay ads. So, okay, I'll keep a closer eye on that. Here, let me split my... Want to do that, and then... Okay, cool. That'll be a little better. Alrighty. So, like we just read from Wild's post, we have to now make a decision. And I think when there's some important parts within the making the decision and some parts that I really enjoyed and like the pacing of it. And I really enjoyed that we were brought along on the decision here. Sean, welcome in. We just went over Boromir's death, and now we're getting into the decision of the company of Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas of what they will do. And then we're going to get into chapter 2, which I'm very excited about. So what we know that there's only 2 boats. One of the boats is missing. We know that the halflings, Boromir told us before he passed that the halflings are taken by the orcs. We do not know. Aragorn was smart enough to ask if Frodo and Sam were in that group, but he asked too late, or I suppose he just asked if Sam was in that group, but he did ask too late. There's a cat behind me. And Boromir has asked us to go to Minas Tirith and save his community for him. So they finished the funeral, and now they need to go solve the riddles. So they find some clear prints. They go back to like look at the boats, right? And they find some prints. They piece together that Sam's bag is gone, and that there was at once a hobbit that went into the water and then came back out, which we know was Sam. So they piece together that Frodo has gone by boat and that Sam has gone with him. But why should he leave us behind him without a word, said Gimli. That was a strange deed, and a brave deed, said Aragorn. Sam was right. I think Frodo did not wish to lead any friends to death with him in Mordor, but he knew that he must go himself. Something happened after he left us that overcame his fear and doubt. And Legolas is like, maybe hunting orcs? And Aragorn is like, he fled certainly, but not, I think, from orcs. Because Aragorn knows. Boromir had told Aragorn, right? But Aragorn is like, Boromir's dead. There's no point in sharing this part and casting any sort of shadows of doubt onto Boromir for the rest of the group. What he thought was the cause of Frodo's sudden resolve and flight, Aragorn did not say. The last words of Boromir he long kept secret. So we know where Frodo has gone. We know Frodo's path. So now we have to make a decision. Now may I make a right choice and change the evil fate of this unhappy day. I will follow the orcs. I would have guided Frodo to Mordor and gone with him to the end, but if I seek him now in the wilderness, I must abandon the captives to torment and death. My heart speaks clearly at last. The fate of the bearer is in my hands no longer. Yet we that remain cannot forsake our companions while we have strength left. And with that, we decide that we're going to start running after the orcs. We pick up the trail of the orcs, and it's very clear that we will need to like dig into our deepest bones and deepest willpower to go on this journey. Like a deer he sprang away, through the trees he sped, on and on he led them, tireless and swift. Now that his mind was at last made up, the woods about the lake they left behind. Long slopes they climbed, dark hard-edged against the sky, already red with sunset. Dusk came, they passed away, gray shadows in a stormy land. What a little poem we had at the end of that chapter. Okay, now we're going into chapter 2. This is our last chapter of the day. The Riders of Rohan. We will make such a chase as shall be accounted a marvel among the three kindreds, elves, dwarves, and men, from the three hunters. Just when your name is in the title of the book and film and you get less than 5 minutes of screen time and are not seen in the book, sad Sauron noises. Fuck him. Sorry. Okay. So let's pick up. Okay. One thing I want to say about this chapter, I think the pacing of this chapter is phenomenal because it felt very like it would pace between like the descriptions of the group, the three. We've got Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn running and like sharing little descriptions of how they differed in their stature and appearance and how they felt in their heart, right? They had a lot of fight. They had a lot of willingness to like push past their boundaries. I'm going to say mortal boundaries, but they're not really all mortal. And then we would have like those little moments, and then we would have moments of discussion, and then it would go back to moments of description and then moments of discussion. And I think that pacing worked really well here. It surprises me that at this time there's little mention to the Oath of Rivendell to only go as long as they will, but they chose their loyalty to the captured hobbits. Yeah, I feel like that they could have easily been like, we were told we didn't need to do this, but they didn't really make it a big deal. Aragorn's like, I would have gone with Frodo to Mordor, but since he decided to go alone, I'm not going to chase after him when there's lives at stake and I could potentially save a life, or at least save them from torment and torture. And we see Legolas and Gimli defer to Aragorn. He accepts the burden of command, the first steps to accepting the burden of kingship. He does. And I will say, Legolas is a silent leader. He doesn't like lead by force, but he is like a steady confidant to Aragorn. He lets Aragorn lead, and he's just like, I'm here. If you ask for my opinion, you've got it. But also, Aragorn has this ability to like read the land and listen to the land, and Legolas has this ability to see deeply, and those differences and their strengths come together quite beautifully here. So along the way, they find 5 dead orcs. And amongst those orcs, what did we find? So we find the 5. So along the way, we're following the path. We find 5 dead orcs, and then it becomes this really like tense, foreboding moment because Aragorn says, I think that the enemy brought his own enemy with him. These are northern orcs from far away. Among the slain are none of the great orcs with the strange badges. There was a quarrel, I guess. It is not uncommon thing with these foul folk. Maybe there was some dispute about the road. Or about the captive, said Gimli. Let us hope that they too did not meet their end here. Legolas has not traveled at all, that's true. He is an elf, but he knows a lot less about the world in the book than movie Legolas does. Yeah, you're right, Kelly. Yeah. I mean, Aragorn is the leader of the group, but I think Legolas has his moments of stepping up when he needs to in the way that benefits the group. Okay. Moving along. So we see another eagle. While I think like the pacing of this section was done really well, there's not a ton that like stood out to me besides like the pacing and the different there was not well, there is here in a bit, but I just thought the pacing was well. It flowed really well. I kept up with what was going on. Like I feel like there's little moments where there's hints dropped. Every now and again, the pursuers found things that had been dropped or cast away. Food bags, the rinds and crust of hard gray bread, a torn black cloak, a heavy iron-nailed shoe broken on the stones. The trail led them north along the top of the escarpment, and at length they came to a deep cleft. The world is really beautifully built here, but it's also very like... it doesn't feel like as important, but I did still think it was good. But if there is something important within this part that I'm kind of like, these details definitely call it out. So they continue, is this where they go down? Okay, yes, this is where, so they continue on and they find this like set of footprints that went away. The description of the chase is rather gripping, but ultimately uneventful. No major plot points, enough details of the pursuit to keep the reader on edge. Yeah, enough, like, it's important in the sense of like when you're reading it, it gives you that experience of going and like being there with them versus like snapping a finger and then all of a sudden we're talking to the Rohans. But not idly do the leaves of Lorien fall. That's a good moment. We see the footprints. Yes, because that's where we're at. We see the footprints that go away, and that's when we notice they're hobbit footprints. Pippin's, I think. He is smaller than the others, and look at this. He held up a thing that glittered in the sunlight. It looked like the new opened leaf of a beech tree, fair and strange in that treeless plain. The brooch of an elven cloak. Not idly do the leaves of Lorien fall. This did not drop by chance. It was cast away as a token to any that might follow. So that gives us, quite literally, that gives us hope. That is heartening. We do not pursue in vain. Let us go on. The thought of those merry young folk driven like cattle burns my heart. So we get this like little sign, this little extra thought that keeps us going, that lets us push a little bit further. And but we have to make a decision if we're going to sleep at night, or should we go on while our will and strength hold? Because we know that the orcs are moving rather rapidly. But we also know that we can only see the tracks by the daylight, because the moon is not bright enough for us in this part of the story. But if I read the signs back yonder rightly, the orcs of the White Hand prevailed, and the whole company is now bound for Isengard. Yet it would be rash to be sure of their counsels, said Gimli. And what of escape? In the dark we should have passed the signs that led you to the brooch. And so they have this debate over whether to rest or to go on. And Legolas wants to continue. Legolas wishes to continue. Gimli wishes to rest. You give, and so Legolas is like, but I'll follow your counsel. This is where we get this little moment with Aragorn. You give the choice to an ill chooser. Since we passed through the Argonath, my choices have gone amiss. He fell silent, gazing north and west into the gathering night for a long while. We will not walk in the dark, he said at length. The peril of missing the trail or sign of other coming and going seemed to me the greater. If the moon gave enough light, we would use it, but alas, he sets early and he is yet young and pale. And tonight he is shrouded anyway, Gimli murmured. Would that lady had given us the light, such a gift as she gave to Frodo. It will be more needed where it is bestowed, said Aragorn. With him lies the true quest. Ours is but a small matter in the great deeds of time, a vain pursuit from its beginning, maybe, which no choice of mine can mar or mend. Well, I have chosen, so let us use this time the best we may. Aragorn is still beating himself up. Tolkien actually tracked the date so that at any one time he'd known the phase of the moon was in. I think it was you who mentioned that last week, Kendra. And I have been very keenly like underlining and been very aware of the moon phases since knowing that was such an important and like intentional choice from Tolkien. So we wake up. Legolas is gazing northwards. He's silent. I love how they said this. Legolas was standing, gazing northwards into the darkness, thoughtful and silent as a young tree in a windless night. They are far, far away, he said sadly, turning to Aragorn. I know in my heart that they have not rested this night. Only an eagle could overtake them now. Nonetheless, we will still follow as we may. And they wake up Gimli, who's still asleep, and they get going on the road. I fear they have passed beyond my sight from hill or plain or under moon or sun, said Legolas. Where sight fails, the earth may bring us rumor, said Aragorn. The land must groan under their hated feet. He stretched himself upon the ground with his ear pressed against the turf. He lay there motionless, for so long a time that Gimli wondered if he had swooned or fallen asleep again. Dawn came glimmering, and slowly a gray light grew about them. At last he rose, and now his friends could see his face. It was pale and drawn, and his look was troubled. The rumor of the earth is dim and confused, he said. Nothing walks upon it for many miles about us. Faint and far are the feet of our enemies, but loud are the hoofs of the horses. And so they decide to go on. And now it's the third day of their pursuit. Stream Elements, thank you so much for showing up. I didn't think Stream Elements was working, so I didn't update that. We will be doing chapters 3 and 4 next week, which is not the 16th. That is, also, we didn't meet. Today's the 23rd. I don't know how to read a calendar, much like I apparently don't know how to read a map. We're meeting on the 30th. Ours is but a small matter in the great deeds of time. Literally chapters devoted to the small matter. It does put the whole thing into perspective, but it is kind of silly, isn't it? Well, not silly, but yeah. I did enjoy that line though. Okay, I love this description. So, because I remember very vividly the moment where you like see all three of them running in this like huge field, and this paragraph really encapsulated that for me in the writing. So the third day of their pursuit began. During all its long hours of cloud and fitful sun, they hardly paused, now striding, now running, as if no weariness could quench the fire that burned them. They seldom spoke. Over the wide solitude they passed, and their elven cloaks faded against the background of the gray-green fields. Even in the cool sunlight of midday, few but elvish eyes would have marked them, until they were close at hand. Often in their hearts they thanked the Lady of Lorien for the gift of lembas, for they could eat of it and find new strength even as they ran. I just love that. It does remind me of that moment where you see them running in the movie, which I think is a phenomenal moment. So they, again at dusk, they halt, and there's this really haunting moment of like stillness around us, stillness and silence, right? Now do I most grudge a time of rest or any halt in our chase, said Legolas. The orcs have run before us as if the very whips of Sauron were behind them. I fear they have already reached the forest and the dark hills, and even now are passing into the shadows of the tree. Gimli ground his teeth. This is a bitter end to our hope and to all our toil. Which hope has been, the Lembas has been helpful for sure, but I think hope has been a crucial element to their journey and to their fight and their willpower within the strenuous activity that they're doing. To hope maybe, but not to toil, said Aragorn. We shall not turn back here, yet I am weary. He gazed back along the way that they had come towards, the night gathering in the east. There is something strange at work in this land. I distrust the silence. I distrust even the pale moon. The stars are faint, and I am weary, and I have seldom been before, weary as no ranger should be with a clear trail to follow. There is some will that lends speed to our foes and sets an unseen barrier before us, a weariness that is in the heart more than in the limb. A weariness that is in the heart more than in the limb. I'm hearing the film music cue in my mind, right? Same. As before, wait. Yeah, so we get this like this conversation, this moment at dusk. It's really important because it's like there's this eeriness of Saruman like haunting everything. And like having this power to like affect their journey in ways that they could never battle, it seems. I do like the little Gimli moments on that run, brief moments of levity. Yeah, yes. And I haven't brought that up at all today, but yeah, I think the moments with Gimli in this section are often moments of levity and moments of like endearing heart. Yep. I agree. Okay. We've got to wake up. We need to get going. And we find some more signs of the orcs. But Legolas says, it is thrice 12 hours, I guess, since the orcs stood where we now stand. Where we now stand. If they held to their pace, then at sundown yesterday they would reach the borders of Fangorn. I can see nothing away north or west but grass dwindling into mist, said Gimli. Could we see the forest if we climbed to the hills? It is still far away, said Aragorn. If I remember rightly, these downs run 8 leagues or more to the north, and then northwest to the issuing of the Entwash. There lies a wide land, another 15 leagues it may be. Well, let us go, said Gimli. My legs must forget the miles. They would be more willing if my heart were less heavy. And I think when we start this journey, we have more hope. The specific journey of finding Pip and Merry. And we're starting to see that, like, as the hope fades, our bodies can give less and less, or seemingly less and less. It feels harder to keep going. And this is the description of the 3 of them running here really tells this story. For many hours they had marched without rest. They were going slowly now, and Gimli's back was bent. Stone hard are the dwarves in labor or journey, but this endless chase began to tell on him, as all hope failed in his heart. Aragorn walked behind him, grim and silent, stooping now and again to scan some print or mark upon the ground. Only Legolas still stepped as lightly as ever, his feet hardly seeming to press the grass, leaving no footprints as he passed. But in the way-bread of the elves, he found all the sustenance that he needed, and he could sleep, if sleep it could be called by men, resting his mind in the strange paths of elvish dreams, even as he walked open-eyed in the light of this world. We don't mention the maps here. We can mention the maps, just don't expect me to look at them. There was a moment, I will say, like, through this, I was like, oh, maybe I'll look at the map. And then I got overwhelmed and I was like, no, I'm fine. I thought of you guys, though, when I was reading this. I was like, well, maybe I'll make them proud. And then I couldn't. 1 league is almost 3.5 miles. That's a lot of miles. That is a lot of miles. Oh, yeah. Okay, an ad. Perfect. Thank you. Thrice 12 hours, not a day and a half, shows you how precise Tolkien uses language to set character. He does such a great job with it, Kendra. He really does. Okay. So, as hope is fading, we have this moment with Legolas where Legolas goes, we talk about resting again, but rest if you must. Do not cast all hope away. Tomorrow is unknown. Rest oft is found at the rising of the sun. Ready, R-E-D-E, oft is found at the rising of the sun. 3 suns already have risen on our chase and brought no counsel, said Gimli. If I can do this again. Cool. Okay. Ahead and eastward, they saw the windy uplands of the wold of Rohan that they had already glimpsed many days ago from the Great River. So now we're coming up on Rohan, and the orc trail turned from the downs towards it. Aragorn saw a shadow on the distant green, a dark, swift, moving blur. He cast himself upon the ground and listened again intently, but Legolas stood beside him, shading his bright elven eyes with his long, slender hand, and he saw not a shadow nor a blur, but the small figures of horsemen. Many horsemen, and the glint of morning on the tips of their spears was like the twinkle of minute stars beyond the edge of mortal sight. Far behind them a dark smoke rose in thin curling threads. There was silence in the empty fields, and Gimli could hear the air moving in the grass. Riders, cried Aragorn, springing to his feet. Many riders on swift steeds are coming towards us. Yes, said Legolas, there are 105. Yellow is their hair and bright are their spears. Their leader is very tall. Reedy equals advice or counsel. Thank you, Toodles. Legolas looks into identifies the riders from 5 leagues distance. Oh, you did. Thank you. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I was like, I knew there was a joke or something that I needed to get back to. Aragorn said, keen are the eyes of elves. So Andrew has given us a joke that he was reminded of from this moment. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson were traveling by train. Holmes was deep into a book, seemingly paying little attention to his surrounding. Dr. Watson was leaning back, enjoying the scenery out of the window. The train passes a meadow where Watson spots a large flock of sheep standing tightly together. Dr. Watson gasped, so many sheep, I wonder how many there were. Holmes, without looking up from his book, elementary, dear Watson, there were exactly 105 sheep. Don't tell me you had the time to count every sheep, Holmes, said Dr. Watson. Don't be absurd, Watson. I simply counted the legs and divided by 4. Can you imagine counting the legs of 105 sheep? Could not be me. Could not be me. Thank you for sharing that joke with us, though. Okay, so we see these riders. They're coming up. We notice that there are 3 empty saddles, but no hobbits. And Aragorn, we decide to take a seat and wait for them and hope that we can get some news from them. And this is important because so they sit on the grass, and Aragorn is explaining who the Rohan people are. They are proud and willful, but they are true-hearted, generous in thought and deed, bold but not cruel, wise but unlearned. But I do not know what has happened here of late, nor what mind the Rohirrim may now be between the traitor Saruman and the threat of Sauron. They have long been the friend of the people of Gondor, though they are not akin to them. It was in forgotten years long ago that Eorl the Young brought them out of the north, and their kinship is rather with the barding of the dale and with the Beornings of the wood, among whom may still be seen many men tall and fair, as are the riders of Rohan. At least they will not love the orcs. But Gandalf spoke of a rumor that they pay tribute to Mordor. Said Gimli, I believe it no more than did Boromir. And so Legolas is like, well, we're still going to learn the truth because they are approaching 420 legs. Thank you, Eric, for doing that math. Legolas is so precise. I can just imagine Legolas's like eagerness. I just think it's hilarious that Legolas let Aragorn lie face down on the ground listening to it to determine horsemen are He didn't stop him. He wasn't like, I'm going to stop you. He was like, yep, you're right. 105 of them to be exact. And their leader is quite tall. Wow, what beautiful golden hair they have. So the riders of Rohan are coming up, and the three of them are sitting there waiting, but they appeared not to perceive the three strangers sitting silently and watching them. The host had almost passed when suddenly Aragorn stood up and called in a loud voice, "What news from the north, riders of Rohan?" So we have this long discussion with this man from Rohan. I will remember his name in a second. I cannot remember how to say this name. Okay. But we learn that they were hunting the orcs, that they have their own special distaste of orcs. And but before that, a little funny moment, because, well, it's not really funny. The guy makes fun of or like kind of casts a snide remark about Lady Galadriel. and Gimli rose and planted his feet firmly apart. His hand gripped the handle of his axe and his dark eyes flashed. "Give me your name, horse master, and I will give you mine, and more besides," he said. And so Gimli kind of comes for the guy, and he's like, don't speak like that about Lady Galadriel. I mean, they don't use her name. And Legolas stands up with him and is like, yep, he doesn't fight alone. So be careful how you choose. Don't mess with Gimli's waifu. Absolutely not. I am called Strider, answered Aragorn. He doesn't use his formal name. No, he doesn't. Let Gimli, the dwarf Glóin's son, warn you against foolish words. You speak evil of that which is fair beyond the reach of your thought, and only little wit can excuse you. Yep. Éomer, I don't remember this name. So we have this conversation with Éomer and Aragorn. Aragorn steps in between, and he's like, okay, you pardon us. When you know more, you will understand why you have angered my companions. We intend no evil to Rohan, nor to any of its folk, neither to man nor to horse. Will you not hear our tale before you strike? First tell me whom you serve, said Aragorn. Are you friend or foe of Sauron, the Dork Lord of Mordor? So Aragorn's getting like right into it, right? And Éomer's like, we do not serve the power of the Black Land far away, but neither are we yet at open war with him. But we desire only to be free and to live as we have lived, keeping our own and serving no foreign lord, good or evil. We welcome guests kindly in the better days, but in the times the unbidden stranger finds us swift and hard. So they're on edge, and I think that's rightful. In the world that we're in right now, it's, I think, natural that a community would be on edge to any sort of stranger, especially when you're in Rohan. You're kind of centered between two forces of, well, we call them evil, I would imagine, but Sauron and Saruman. And so, yes. Okay, but here's this little like power move from Aragorn, right? I serve no man, said Aragorn, but the servants of Sauron I pursue into whatever land they must go. There are few among mortal men who know more of orcs, and I do not hunt them in the fashion out of choice. The orcs whom we pursued took captive two of my friends, In such need, a man that has no horse will go on foot, and he will not ask for leave to follow the trail, nor will he count the heads of the enemy save with a sword. I am not weaponless. Aragorn threw back his cloak. The elven sheath glittered as he grasped it, and the bright blade of Andúril shone like a sudden flame as he swept it out. Elendil, he cried, I am Aragorn, son of Arathon, and am called Elisar, the Elfstone Dunduan, the heir of Isildur, Elendil, son of Gondor. What a mouthful. Here is a sword that was broken and is forged again. Will you aid me or thwart me? Choose swiftly. Gimli may be even less subtle and tactful than Ron Weasley. You're right about that. All right. So Gimli and Legolas looked at their companion in amazement, for they had not seen him in this mood before. Éomer stepped back, and a look of awe was in his face. Tell me, Lord, he said, what brings you here, and what was the meaning of the dark words? Long has Boromir, son of Denethor, been gone seeking the answers, and the horse we lent him came back riderless. What doom do you bring of the north? The doom of choice, said Aragorn. You may say this to Theoden, son of Thengel. Open war lies before him, with Sauron or against him. None may live now as they have lived, and few shall keep what they call their own. But of these great matters we will speak later. If chance allows, I will come myself to the king. Now I am in great need, and I ask for help, or at least for tidings. You heard that we are pursuing an orc host that carried off our friends. What can you tell us? That you need not pursue them further. The orcs are destroyed. And our friends? We found none but orcs. So we tell of Perry and Mip, and we're like, you didn't see any halflings. No halflings. Aragorn isn't king by title. He is king. Total badass. It's a shining moment for Aragorn. The writers were convinced they had heard the legends. So that's right, because halflings are like, they're we say halflings, right? Halflings, laughed the rider that stood beside Éomer. Halflings, but they are only little people in old songs and children's tales out of the north. Do we walk in legends or on the green earth in the daylight? There's a moment. Oh, okay. And Aragorn goes, a man may do both. For now we but those who come after will make the legends of our time. The green earth, say you? That is a mighty matter of legend, though you tread it under the light of day. What a twisted word way to be like, shut up, help us. You did, yeah, yep. We went over Gimli's Champion of Galadriel moment. We sure did. We sure did. It's a great moment. It's a really great moment. It's important to note in between this, there's a long section, or kind of like a really detailed section of how the people in Rohan are. That Gandalf is not welcomed there, because we bring up Gandalf. We're like, we can tell you, so we get called out for not telling the whole story, right, of why we're on this journey. And Aragorn's like, the company that I journeyed with had other business. Of that I cannot speak now. Gandalf the Grey was our leader. And that's when we learned that Gandalf had come to Rohan, and we'll just read this. Gandalf Graham is known in the Mark, but his name, I warn you, is no longer a password to the king's favor. He has been a guest in the land many times in the memory of men, coming as he will, after a season or after many years. He is ever the herald of strange events, a bringer of evil, some now say. Indeed, since his last coming in the summer, all things have gone amiss. At that time, our trouble with Saruman began. Until then, we counted Saruman our friend, but Gandalf came then and warned us that sudden war was preparing in Isengard. He said that he himself had been a prisoner on Orthanc and had hardly escaped, and he begged for help. But Theoden would not listen to him, and he went away. Speak not the name of Gandalf loudly in Theoden's ears. He is wroth, for Gandalf took the horse that is called Shadowfax, the most precious of all the king's steeds, chief of the Meras, which only the lord of the Mark may ride. For the sire of their race was the great horse of Errol that knew the speech of men. 7 nights ago Shadowfax returned, but the king's anger is not lost, for now the horse is wild and will let no man handle him. The book said Bornings, not what I heard. Oh. Bjorn is bear in The Hobbit. Bjorn is a werebear. I don't know what this is referencing, but that's okay. It does come back later. Gimli didn't say he accepts. No, it does come back later because we'll get to that. We are almost done. Probably about like 10 more minutes to get through this section, I believe. So get any last little thing, or get, if you have any, well, I don't need to ask that yet. Okay. So we learn this like really grave detail that Gandalf is not welcomed in Rohan, and also then we say Gandalf will ride no longer. He fell into darkness in the minds of Moria and comes not again. And Éomer's like, oh well, that is heavy tidings, at least to me and to many, though not to all, as you may find if you come visit the king. Then we also announce Boromir's death, that he was slain by the same orcs whom you destroyed. Your news is all woe, cried Éomer in dismay. Éomer, great harm is the death of Minas Tirith, and to us all. That was a worthy man. All spoke his praise. He came seldom to the mark, for he was ever in the wars on the east borders, but I have seen him, more like to the swift sons of Earl than to the grave men of Gondor, but he seemed to me, and likely to prove a great captain of his people when it came time. But we've had no word of this grief out of Gondor. When did he fall? It is now the fourth day since he was slain, answered Aragorn, and since the evening of that day we have journeyed from the shadow of Tol Brandir. On foot? Yes, even as you can see. Wide wonder came into this is where everything changes, right? Wide wonder came into Aramir's eyes. Strider is too poor a name, son of Arathorn, he said. Wingfoot I name you. This deed of the three friends should be sung in many a hall. It is true that we are not yet at open war with the Black Land, and there are some close to the king's ear that speak craven counsel, but war is coming. So they have this chief concern with Saruman because he's claimed lordship over all this land. And there's been war between them for many months. And that's another reason why they are so eager and like so eager to fight the orcs and doing what they can to go after them. It is ill dealing with such a foe. He is a wizard both cunning and dwemer crafty, having many guises. He walks here and there, they say, as an old man, hooded and cloaked, very like to Gandalf, as many now recall. His spies slip through every net, and his bird of ill omen are abroad in the sky. I do not know how it will all end, and my heart misgives me, for it seems to me that his friends do not dwell in Isengard. But if you come to the king's house, you shall see for yourself. Will you not come? Do I hope in vain that you have been sent to me for a help in doubt and need? I will come when I may. And Éomer's like, no, come now. Strider's who yeah, I love the Wingfoot. A wordy triathlon for the Tolkien funds. So Éomer keeps trying to get us to come, right? And he even says this, will you not come? There are spare horses, as you see. There's work for the sword to do, yes, and we could find a use for Gimli's axe in the bow of Legolas, if they will pardon me for my rash words concerning the Lady of the Wood. I spoke only as do all men in my land, and I would gladly learn better. And, but Aragorn's like, I can't desert my friends while hope remains. Hope does not remain. You will not find your friends on the north borders, yet my friends are not behind. Then what do you think has become of them? So we keep going back and forth because Éomer, it almost seems like Éomer will has to make a decision on if we go or if we can go on our own free will, or if we have to go back with him. And like, he's either giving us the choice of like going back with him, right? Or going, like being tied up and going back with him. And Aragorn won't let up, because he knows, he's like, as if there's hope that they're out there, or Aragorn needs to go find out for himself. Like, that is his duty. That is his choice. So Éomer says, I have begged you to come back willingly with me, and you will not. Loth am I to begin a battle of 100 against 3. I do not think your law was made for such a chance. Nor indeed am I a stranger. Never in a former days would any high lord of this land have constrained a man to abandon such a quest as mine. My duty at least is clear, to go on. Come now, son of Emond, the choice must be made at last. Aid us, or at the worst let us go free, or seek to carry out your law. If you do so, there will be fewer to return to your war or to your king. My company chafes to be away, and every hour lessens your hope. This is my choice. You may go, and what is more, I will lend you horses. This only I ask. When your quest is achieved, or is proved vain, return with the horses over the Entwade to Mudusel, the high house under the doors where Theoden now sits. Thus you shall prove to him that I have not misjudged. In this I place myself, and maybe my very life, in the keeping of your good faith. Do not fail. Éomer is desperate for help. Yes, absolutely. And he takes a chance, and he gives us the 2 horses, which it kind of seems like his life is on the line for making this choice. And then there's this funny moment where Gimli's like, he's like, okay, I'll give you a horse, and I'll even give one to this elf, but it may be well enough for this lord of the race of Gondor, but who has heard of a horse of the mark being given to a dwarf? No one, said Gimli, and do not trouble. No one will ever hear of it. I would sooner walk than sit on the back of any beast so great, free or begrudged. And so instead of getting his own horse, he sits on the horse with Legolas, which is just another sign that the kinship between dwarves and elves is continuing to heal. Yep. Gimli was lifted up behind his friend, and he clung to him not much more at ease than Sam Gamgee in a boat. Come, you shall sit behind me, friend Gimli. I love their friendship. Okay, and then we circle back to the Lady of Galadriel one more time. Farewell, and may you find what you seek, cried Éomer. Return with what speed you may, and let our swords hereafter shine together. I will come, said Aragorn. And I will come too, said Gimli. The matter of the Lady Galadriel still lies between us. I have yet to teach you gentle speech. We shall see, said Éomer. So many strange things have chanced that to learn the praise of a fair lady under the loving strokes of a dwarf's axe will seem no great wonder. Farewell. Gimli, the horse backseat rider of fame. Yes. They find the orc bodies. They find no sign of Merry and Pip. No trace of Merry and Pip by nightfall. The Council of Gandalf was not found. Okay, but we have this discussion at nightfall about this. We can do no more, said Gimli sadly. We have been set many riddles since we came to Tol Brandir, but this is the hardest to unravel. I would guess that the burdened bones of the hobbits are now mingled with the orcs. It will be hard news for Frodo if he lives to hear it, and hard too for the old hobbit who waits in Rivendell. Elrond was against their coming, but Gandalf was not, said Legolas. But Gandalf chose to come himself, and he was the first to be lost. His foresight failed him. The Council of Gandalf was not founded on foreknowledge of safety for himself or for others. There are some things that is better to begin than to refuse, even though the end may be dark. But I shall not depart from this place yet. In any case, we must here await the morning light. And so we wait. But we have this discussion because Gimli is cold. We're cold. We want to start a fire. Is it safe to start a fire? Is it not safe to start a fire? Well, one thing is for sure. We're on the very edge of Fangorn, and it is perilous to touch the trees of the woods, it is said. So we use any of the wood, or any of the wood that is on the ground that's already been cut off or chipped away. We do start a fire, and that's when we have this little moment with the tree that we're sitting around or against. When the dwarf had a small bright blaze going, the three companions drew close to it and sat together, shrouding the light with their hooded forms. Legolas looked up at the boughs of the tree reaching out above them. "Look," he said, "the tree is glad of the fire." It may have been that the dancing shadow tricked their eyes, but certainly to the eyes of the companions, the boughs appeared to be bending this way and that so as to come above the flames. While the upper branches were stooping down, the brown leaves now stood out stiff and rubbed together like many cold, cracked hands taking comfort in the warmth. There was a silence, for suddenly the dark and unknown forest, so near at hand, made itself felt as a great brooding presence fell of secret purpose. "So have no care, cut no living wood." Sam Ganji in a boat, nice reference. It was cute. It was cute. The issue between Gimli and Boromir props back up at a very unexpected point much later. Gimli is... I have no doubt Gimli is serious. The old man that lurks, and yes, yep, because we are making it, we are just about at the end. We do get our first mention of Ents, though. But... So Gimli is, so they choose who's going to have first watch for the night, and Gimli is given first watch. Suddenly Gimli looked up, and there, just on the edge of the firelight, stood an old bent man, leaning on a staff and wrapped in a great cloak. His wide-brimmed hat was pulled down over his eyes. Gimli sprang up, too amazed for the moment to cry out, though at once the thought flashed into his mind that Sauron had caught them. Both Aragorn and Legolas, roused by his sudden movement, sat up and stared. The old man did not speak or make a sound. Well, father, what can we do for you?" said Aragorn, leaping to his feet. "Come and be warm if you are cold." He strode forward, but the old man was gone. There was no trace of him to be found near at hand, and they did not dare to wander far. The moon had set, and the night was very dark. And then we find out that the horses are frickin' gone, which we were... and are supposed to bring them back. And also that puts us in a really perilous moment. As they stood, it seemed to them that they heard, far off in the night, the sound of horses whinnying and neighing. Then all was quiet again, except for the cold rustle of the wind. They have a discussion about who it is. Because everyone's kind of like dejected in this moment, right? "If you wish to know what I think," he began after a while, "I think it was Saruman. Who else? Remember the words of Eomer. He walks about like an old man, hooded and cloaked. Those were the words. He has gone off with our horses or scared them away, and here we are. There is more trouble coming to us, mark my words." "I mark them," said Aragorn, "but I marked also that this old man had a hood and had a hat, not a hood. Still, I do not doubt that you guess right, and that we are in peril here by night or day. Yet in the meantime, there is nothing that we can do." I lost my place. "Yet in the meantime, there is nothing that we can do but rest. While we may, I will watch for a while now, Gimli. I have more need of thought than of sleep." The night passed slowly. Legolas followed Aragorn, and Gimli followed Legolas, and their watches wore away. But nothing happened. The old man did not appear again, and the horses did not return. Who is it indeed? That is the question. A question we will have to wait for the answer. As I have my thoughts, but I want to experience that in the book. So I will keep my thoughts to myself, because I fear if I say them, I will get a hint on if I am correct or not. But that's where we end for today. So any last thoughts? I'm going to tell you what the assignment is for next week, because I'm very excited for this. We have chapters 3 and chapters 4 for next week. We have the Uruk-hai and we have Treebeard. So I am so excited for our next section. It's going to be a very good one. And again, we're only doing two chapters for this book. I think the final section is 3 chapters, but I'll tell you if we're doing 3. I will get the live stream set up, scheduled, so you can do that. And then also I'll get the Discord event up tonight, pretty much right after I turn off stream. That way I have everything as it needs to be, and I don't set it up Monday afternoon when I realize. I'll go back to 1979 me, and I'll tell you that I'm certain that the old man is Saruman. Yeah. I mean, I have my theories because of the movie, but I kind of want to see how it plays out in the book, you know? So I am like, I don't know. I want the reveal to be fresh. That is the one thing I miss. You can't ever experience a story for the first time again, huh? You can only experience it in different ways, which are not bad, just different. Gimli is certain of that too. Aragorn less certain. Well, we shall see. We shall see. Okay. Again, stream is next Monday, the 30th, 5 p.m. Central, same time. Chapters 3 and 4. The Uruk-hai and Treebeard, so we're in for a treat. So I'll see you Monday, if not before then, elsewhere on the internet. We're doing scary games over on Twitch this week if you guys want to come by. All the links for everything is in different places and YouTube and stuff. So Present Me says he doesn't know who it was. Present Me is also going to say I don't know who it is. I think I know who it is, but I'm keeping it quiet. Okay. Thank you guys for for great 2 chapters. This was a great one. This was a good reading. A great start to the 2 towers. We'll be back next week. I'll see you then. Goodbye.